just making sure everyone's in the right place. I get it. It's Tuesday. Those things happen. This is website design for non-web designers. This is targeted for our suppliers who maybe need some help in figuring out what they need to do with their website. That's what we're here to do. We have a lot of quality examples from different e-commerce sites, not necessarily in the promotional product industry, but clothing sites. I know there's a couple, like I know we feature Zappos, so we're trying to just get an eclectic view of what's going on across the globe with e-commerce, and so everyone has a good understanding of what we're doing. As always, ask us questions. We'll try to answer them in real time. I know for the last webinar we didn't have too many questions like during it, but hopefully we have an engaging audience this time and we'll get some good questions out of you. We're excited to answer them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our handsome Director of UX, Matt Smyth. Matt, say hello.
Hi, guys.
Matt is the undisputed #1 coolest employee at ASI. I know for Copy That Converts we featured the 2 coolest, but Matt's probably up there too. And then I'm Colin Roth. I host the webinars. I'm a digital marketing manager. I like to have fun. So we have a poll for everybody, and I hope everyone enters. And it's kind of to figure out, so we understand where you guys stand with your web design, how you do it, what services do you use, do you pay someone to do it. This helps us understand how to curate this webinar. So we're just going to take a minute or two and let everyone get to that poll. All right, Matt. So we're seeing, wow, okay. So over half of you had someone externally build the website. That's interesting. I was not expecting that.
That's great. So hopefully this session will be helpful. Help you speak to your designers and your third-party builders in a way that is helpful for both you and them, and kind of communicate what you want as clearly as possible. So
yeah, that's going to be the goal then of this webinar, is to help you guys learn how to communicate with your designers. Excuse me. So actually, a new feature with GoToWebinars, I can give out handouts. So I was like, hey, we'll give out handouts. And so the handout we have is a website mock-up, and that's really what we want to get across is anyone can design a website. All you need is pen and paper. Matt, how many lines of code do you write per day on average?
0.
What about your team?
0.
Yeah, so web design, you don't need to be, the best coder in the world. You just need to be able to communicate your ideas correctly, and that's what Matt does so well. I think that's pretty much it. Did you want to add anything to that before we dive into web design?
No, I'm ready to rock.
All right. So contrary to popular belief, there is good and bad web design. There's a lot of good and bad web design. And to quote Justice Stewart, who said, "I know it when I see it."
Yeah, and I think the important thing here about this image is that, Colin, on the left here, now the top portion of you is dressed really nicely. The bottom half, there's probably some room for improvement. And I'm there on the right, and I look great. And I think the thing that's important is that websites can have good and bad design at the same time. There can be things that are done really well on a website and things that are done poorly. I think when you're looking at, when you're about to go build your website, do a redesign, start from scratch, do a new page, think about the two or three things that are most important to you. So, or what the use cases are. So in this case, Colin, I'm dressed really well for a full body shot where you can see, from head to toe. Whereas, Colin, you're probably optimized for someone who's sitting at a desk and just doing like the anchor man.
I'm right above the fold.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's something to really take a lot of time thinking about. Who's coming to your site? What is most important to them? And then how do your needs intersect with what they want? But a good design is not necessarily a black and white thing. There's there's definitely an area of gray there.
But for today, because we could go all throughout the internet and talk about bad design, let's just try to focus on good design and where we can kind of take our website to the next level. So without further ado, simple navigation. I think this is probably the biggest hurdle for e-commerce, especially for our industry. Like, I'm a supplier. I have 5,000 products that I'm trying to display to distributors to get them to buy. How is the best way to organize those websites?
I think the first thing you want to do is you want to create some kind of hierarchy of what the most important areas of navigation are to you. So you might have an about section, you might have a sales section, you might have specific product landing pages. And what you want to do is create buckets. So yes, you may have many landing pages about different product categories, but you can probably lump those together in one thing. And you really don't want to have, of course every site is different, but you want to look somewhere between 3 to 5, 6, or 7 navigation items. What happens is when you make everything important, nothing becomes important. And navigation does two things. One, it lets a user get to other parts of the site efficiently. But on another level, it also shows what is available on the site. So although I may not click on the Contact Us button, I know that I can contact you. And so understanding how those things are named and trying to limit the number of them to what is most relevant is important. I would also say in navigation, spend a lot of time thinking about how you're naming your navigation. The names that you use internally and the words that you use internally at your office are not necessarily the words that your customers are going to use. So, try to use as much plain English as possible. Of course, you don't want to use too many words for each navigation item, but if one word is vague, use 2 words. So you could say contact or contact us. Contact us might be a little bit more descriptive. So something that simple is going to help you out a lot. But navigation is the starting point for any good website.
So we have a couple of examples, and these might take a second to load. Yes. So what we're looking at is Ray-Ban's website, and I really liked how they organized their sunglasses. So to Matt's point, like, they found these buckets. People come to this website to buy certain sunglasses. Let's just put our top 5 right at the top so everyone can access it at once. I think that's an ingenious way to organize it.
The other important thing here is they have sunglasses, which they've pulled out to the top. It's the closest. The top left, it's the closest to the logo, which is where most people's eye is going to go. So their eye is going to go from the top left and then around to the right, down to the bottom of the page and around to the right. Also see if we hover on sunglasses again,
it's animated.
We'll see that they use images. So yes, I could say the word aviator, or wayfarer, or clubmaster, but instead I'm going to use an image because that's how the user is most likely going to identify it. When you go to a sunglass store, you're more likely to look at the sunglasses themselves rather than what the names are, and I think that's a really important thing for them to keep in mind. And so this site does a really good job of that. A lot of use of images instead of text.
Yeah, I love that. And then they have a nice layout. So we're gonna. This is a recording that I did a couple weeks ago, I think last week. And basically, we'll go through the whole website. This will be available after the entire presentation. This recording, everything will be available after the fact. So don't worry, everything will come. But I just wanted to showcase the whole site, and then Matt and I are just going to talk about things briefly. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that before I jumped in, but I'm a little excited. So the next example we have is Bonobos, and they do, I think, probably one of the best e-commerce jobs in terms of organizing their site. They have these nice little icons along the bottom, and sorry if it's a little bit jaggy, these chips. They have those nice icons along the bottom that help organize where the user is going to go, how they're going to interact with the site.
I think the other thing, too, here to notice about the site, when you first come to the site, they give you a really big, what we call, hero image that calls out, the main value proposition and gives you a call to action. And so the thing to kind of notice there is that, they feel like their users are coming to their site for something that's a little bit more timely. So meaning that what is important to the user is changing more often than it's the same.
Yeah.
So something. So think about the seasons, or if there's a special sale, and they put that what you would consider their primary navigation below the fold. And so that's another way to address navigation. If you feel like your business is really cyclical and it changes, say, every quarter, you may want to look at doing something that's going to change more often at the top of the page. That being said, it may be more difficult for someone to find something that they're used to. So trying to keep consistent, if say they're looking for something that's off season, just trying to kind of weigh those two options. But I think the site does a really good job of that.
I even like that sidebar nav too. They have everything there, so in case someone didn't find something along that, they can just go right there.
The other important thing to kind of consider is they have what we call this hamburger menu. So if in that top left-hand corner, it's
right where it's shop.
Right where it's called shop. And a lot of people are approaching design what we call mobile first. So that I'm sure that they've done some research to find that a large number of their customers are coming either from an iPhone or probably more likely an iPad. And so they designed their navigation on the left-hand side to optimize for that. And they've decided on the web to have the same experience. One, it's a little bit easier in terms of implementation. And two, for a consistent experience, sometimes that makes more sense. But again, you have to look at your customers and where they're coming from. B2C clients typically are going to see more mobile than B2B clients, just because mobile is not as common in B2B.
Very, very true. So another example that and that's the hamburger menu Matt's talking about. That's what's showing up right there, that nice black box. They do a great job organizing everything. Another example we have is Oliver Peoples. They use what's called a fixed nav on the side, and as you'll see, once we start scrolling, the menus don't move, and that's a really good kind of way to use the navigation so that a user can constantly figure out where they are, how to use the service, how to use their website.
Yeah, the nice thing about those sticky navs, those fixed navs, is that you can have very long pages, home pages, search result pages, and the user never is at a place where they can't get to another section of the site quickly. That's very good if you have a very small subset of navigation items. If you start to get into more navigations that have 2 or 3 levels of hierarchy, then that could be a little difficult. But again, also it's how you present yourself to your customers. Sometimes that's done just to kind of present a new flavor. So if your product is heavily design focused, you might want to lean your design a little bit to the left in terms of being a little more progressive. If your audience or your product is a little more traditional, you may want to go with more of a traditional navigation. But again, you've got to look at your audience. And again, this left-hand navigation is really good for mobile. The other thing that you should take note of is every site that we've been to, there's a heavy use of images of people. It's a lot easier for a customer to identify themselves or their customer using a product if they can imagine that product on a person. It sounds like a simple concept, but you'd be surprised at how many websites do not use images of people to kind of place the product in context. It also helps give the context of scale and fit. So if you're the apparel industry, it helps show how it fits on the body. If you are doing some sort of electronic, it helps give context of how big it is in the hand, or maybe next to a notebook or something like that. So just keep that in mind, that a product on its own is really good for a detailed spec like you see here, but then eventually you're going to want to show how that looks on a person so you can see scale.
So listen, I know Matt and I went over a lot, and Matt had a lot of good advice for what to do. So here's what was important about that. 3 main takeaways. You don't need to have a category for every single product. You should kind of lump everything into buckets. Make sure you have a clear navigation hierarchy. That was what was so great about Bonbo's and Oliver Peoples, was it was very easy to see where I was. And fixed navigation and that sidebar are better for the user ultimately. Anything to add, Matt?
Well, and just to kind of take that a step further, when we are designing new pages and new sites, I would say we spend the majority of our time thinking about navigation and the actions we want the user to take before we really start putting things on paper. So we might draw some sketches on a whiteboard or something, but by the time you go to design your page, you should have a very clear idea of what's important. You cannot design a good website, specifically navigation, unless you know what's important. And that really should be a small subset of things as possible.
Navigation, the backbone for your e-commerce website. You heard it here first, hopefully. So the next thing, feature your best products or feature any type of products. Thus far, we've seen that a lot on those home pages. I can think specifically of Bonbo's, but Birchbox also does a really good job of when I arrive, they're trying to get me into their monthly box, which is their flagship product, and then they're trying to funnel me off into men's or women's. So they do a great job open up the door, letting those horses go, I think is the phrase, something like that. And, letting them go. They want me into one of those funnels.
I think that it really goes back to talking about what's most important for your customer. So before you start designing your site, it probably would do some good to start to have a couple of ideal customers in mind. So say you don't have a website and you have a physical shop. Think about the people that come into that shop and what they typically look like. What are they typically asking for? What kind of person are they? And then second, featuring your most popular product. Now, if you've got products that aren't selling as much as you'd like them to, or if you've got a product that's new, you of course want to showcase those, but you've only got about 3 seconds to grab someone's attention. And most likely what's going to grab their attention is the thing that is either most relevant to them or most relevant to other people in terms of popularity. So the homepage is not the time to be kind of trying out new ideas on what might work for a new product. You really want to go with what is your core business and your core value proposition. Well, when we get into landing pages, we can talk about testing those segments, but for your homepage, you really want to focus on those 2 or 3 products that are the core of your business that people identify your business with, and that'll tell a story without a lot of words.
So next, we have another really good example of a clothing store that segments everything off on that homepage. They have a clear vision of where they want me to go. If I'm looking for that deal, they have that 40% off section right there, and it's a big image. Everything looks the same. It's easy for me to navigate. I know exactly where I want to go. I know my place.
Yeah, the great thing about this site is that they have a very consistent style in terms of typography. They also
What does that mean, typography? Like, what do you mean?
The text, the fonts.
The fonts all look the same?
So you can see it's very high contrast. It also, they took into account that text would look good on top of their images. So it's very image focused, but they had to pick a font style that would work on top of images. And you should spend a lot of time on that homepage looking at the images that most represent it. The other thing too is that yes, they have kind of buckets of navigation that are different, but those are kind of these funnels that they've identified, so they can identify that someone is specifically coming for denim, or someone is specifically coming for the brand Huff, or and it's going to take a lot of time for you to figure those things out. But once you do, and you know that those products are most popular, this can also serve as a supplement to your primary navigation that goes across the top.
That's a great point. I never looked at it like that. That it supplements your main nav.
The other thing too is it tells me everything that's on the site, so we don't even have to click anywhere, and we know the majority of the content that's going to be on the site and the types of content that's going to be on the site without going anywhere.
Yep.
And so don't be afraid to use images on that homepage as both navigation and a way to tell your story without the user having to click everywhere around the site.
So next we have an example of what I'm going to call an inventory burn homepage, which I think a lot of suppliers would be interested in. They have inventory to burn. How do I get rid of it? And so this was from last week. Chubby's, which is another clothing brand, they were trying to just get rid of all their 4th of July stuff. And if you went to chubbyshorts.com, the website would be different. But it's great because they're targeting 4th of July stuff. They know it's that time of the year. They know it's that those products are going to sell.
So another approach, if you are trying to get a specific product or type of product out the door over a certain time is actually eliminating a lot of the navigation and having one primary place to click, like this site does. So the idea is that although that image may not tell the story of who we are and the things that we can offer, if we know that, say, it's towards the end of the year and I want to get rid of a specific inventory, if you remove all other navigation items or most other navigation items, the user can only really click on what is important. Now, there is a gamble there, hoping that what you're presenting is important, but I think that the idea is if you are having trouble getting someone to a certain page, then take everything else off your home page and put just an image or some content there that would lead them to that page. And you see people do this on mobile sites a lot because they have to because of space, but I think it's a really nice thing to do on the web when you're trying to burn through some inventory. And so of course I would use it sparingly, but it is a nice thing to do when you're trying to push something out the door.
Yeah, again, I love inventory burn websites. They're very, very, very interesting. Just to reiterate, because I know we have a couple of people who are late to join, all of these screen shares and all of these videos that I have, we're going to send those out with the notes. All the presentation, all of that will be sent out after the fact. So no need, if you feel a little overwhelmed, that's perfectly understandable. Ask questions, we're here to answer them. So what was the important stuff? Please try to split, this goes into navigation, but split your products into a few major categories and echo that in your navigation, just like what Karmaloop did. If you have a special, put that in the forefront of your homepage. Karmaloop did that too with the 40% off. They want people to act on those specials. Obviously, that's how they're making money. And like Chubby's, use your homepage if you're trying to get rid of inventory, or if it's 4th of July and you want to sell more 4th of July products. It's a great way to kind of burn that inventory and burn any extra that you have. Next, this is my favorite. Show your face.
My favorite too.
Well, yeah, no, I think because every supplier out there, I know this for a fact, you have a great family story, or you have a great story of how your business started. But a lot of people ask me, like, how do I tell that story in my website? Because it's kind of confusing. So one great way to do it is being personal. If you guys want, you can rewatch the Copy That Converts webinar we did last month. That's a big way to be personal with your customers and relate to them on a great level and get that bond instantly.
Yeah, I think that the thing about the promotional products industry and being a supplier that's important is that there is an element of the sale that goes into that one-to-one relationship. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get that across. So the design of your site, thinking about the copy that you're going to use, the tone that you're going to use. The other thing is on certain product pages and when you do landing pages, reiterate how the values of your company or the history of your company goes to support what the customer's experience is going to be. And that's a really important thing to kind of focus on, is that your face, so who you are, who your identity is as a company, is important, but it's only important in the context of the customer who's coming to you. Yes, they care that you've been a business for 50 years, and yes, they care that you have a great staff that has been with you, customer support staff, but they want to really know how that's going to translate into their relationship with you. So finding a way to kind of make those two things intersect is really important. What I would do too is find a way to work it onto product pages and landing pages. I wouldn't simply just have an About Us page. Although I think that that's a valuable thing to have, I would want to try to look beyond that and see how we can have a tone and a direction of the site that goes beyond that. So into your product descriptions, into your emails that you send out, for confirmation, into everything you do, your story in your face is kind of it's an overarching layer that you need to go across everything.
The other thing too is these About Us pages, they're not terribly long. They're short, to the point, I'm in and I'm out, and they have nice big images that complement them. So to Matt's point, they're talking about how that relates to them. So their factory, they're speaking to their quality of their products specifically on this page.
Exactly.
With the founders, they're speaking that they've known each other for a while, they want to do this for a while. That's what Matt's saying, and it's echoed in this page. And in our next one, which is tell your story. I'm very for telling a story, especially a business story, but do it on a specific page. Don't do it on your home page. Push it to somewhere else. And when you want to educate those. If they're interested in the About Us, they're going to be interested in your story. Do it there. Don't do it on the homepage.
Yeah, I think the other important thing about your story is that your story is always evolving. So, you know, if you're involved in charity organizations, or if you're involved in, you know, some kind of community outreach, or if you have a great experience with a customer, you help someone out, think of your story as something that's continually building and not, you know, kind of a static thing. They want to know, people who care will want to know what's kind of happening lately. And again, keeping it short, keeping the language very plain. Think that your customer, of course, they care who you are, but they don't have a lot of time to read, or they don't want to spend a lot of time reading. So think of it like a cocktail party. What would you tell them in the, you know, the 30 seconds that you have their ear?
That's a great kind of relation there. So what's the important stuff there? Showcase your story. Just please don't do it on the homepage. Break your story up with nice pictures and short paragraphs. Don't make it just a long soliloquy that's, you know, a college essay. Keep it probably around 250 words. And lastly, show your pretty face off. Everyone wants to see that beautiful mug, Matt. So you need search. This is crucial for an e-commerce website. And we actually have a solution to put you ahead of about 84% of top 50 e-commerce sites globally. So that's Amazon, all those, Walmart, and that's that those sites don't support product searching by name or SKU number. That's a big deal. So
yeah, I mean, most often we talked a lot about the home page and the about page and all these different things that you can do, but the majority of the time someone comes to your website, they know what they're looking for. And that's true on pretty much all websites. You want to have a great browse experience, but you've got to think about what the user is looking for. So if the user is looking for a specific product, they're going to want to type that product in. And the tough thing about search is that they're not always going to know exactly how to say it. And how you reference your product is not necessarily how they would today or even tomorrow. So as Director of UX, we spend a lot of time looking at the search terms across all of our properties, and we see that people oftentimes will end up at the same products seasonally, but they arrive there at very different ways. So I think having a flexible search that is accurate, relevant, and clear cannot be understated. And I would say that is the #1 feature on any e-commerce website. Just think about the times when you go to shop. How often do you go and kind of just click around aimlessly? Even when you're clicking onto these landing pages and you're kind of narrowing it down from them, oftentimes the backbone that's serving those products is a search engine. And I think that importance really can't be overstated.
Search is king in this scenario. So let's look at our first example. This is an audio website, and what we're going to do is I'm going to search for a DAC, which is it's a little tool that you use to increase. It's a digital to analog converter. So that's a pretty specific term. I'm hoping that I can trip up the search engine a little bit. So once we scroll up here, we'll see what this website can do and if those search results are accurate. Once I get to the top, see, I thought recording this was going to be such a good idea. And I was going to be like, oh, I'll make it a GIF and I'll just repeat. And I found that it's not a good idea. So here I go.
I think it's a great idea.
Searching for a DAC.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. So wow, I found some DACs.
So one thing to point out here is the search is the primary thing on the page next to the logo. Right. It's even above the navigation. So they understand that a large portion of users are going to start with search. They have a very clear search result. They have the price, they have the description, and a clear image. They don't clutter the search results with tons of information. Now, I would say this product description, frankly, is probably a little long.
Yeah.
So maybe, you know, we'll give them a call and see if we can help them out. But the important thing is that he put in a fairly specific term and is able to arrive at that product quickly.
Quickly and effectively, yeah.
Now, if he were to go for, you know, if he was going to go a traditional route, it might take him 2 or 3 more clicks, and by that time, you've lost him.
And I know that a lot of you guys are thinking search is pretty easy, like Matt and I are overhyping this, but here's an example of me searching on Zappos. Zappos is, you know, a massive, massive, massive company. So me searching for a Nike running shoe should work, right, Matt? Yeah.
No, so the most relevant product doesn't seem to be at the top. And so this really gets into the really specific things about search. But you can see off to the left, what they have a faceted navigation that allows you to filter down to get to a more specific product. So what they're saying here is that their general search most often is not going to yield the most specific results, partially because of the types of products they get, probably the large number, partially because of the types of information they have on those products, and then there's some other reasons that maybe a user wants to navigate around even though they have some specific features. So as you see, Colin's filtering down here, and he should get more specific results as he goes. Now, the faceted navigation is really good when you don't have a specific idea of what you want,
right?
Or you have a very large number of products.
Which is good for distributors, right?
Yeah. So on a distributor ESP website, they have faceted navigation. There's hundreds of thousands of products on their website. We also keep that on supplier websites because we have suppliers that have a lower number of products and suppliers that have a higher number of products. And so it's a benefit. If it's a benefit when it's there, and when there's a high number, and when there's a low number, it's kind of a moot point. But at least it shows when it's relevant.
So perfect transition here, Matt. And I'm going to stroke Matt's ego a little bit on this next example. But I was able to find a great little search tool on our example supplier site. And watch. So I'm going to start really vague. I'm going to start with mugs. I don't know why. I said I was going to do chainsaws, but I changed my mind.
That's my favorite example.
I know, chainsaw is such a good example.
And ham.
Chainsaws and ham. So the mugs comes back. These are nice mugs. Not very specific, though.
Yeah, so this is general search. You can imagine if a distributor is coming to your site to try to find a product in general for their customer, but they don't know exactly what they're looking for. They would start with a more general search, and now he's putting in something more specific.
Beer mugs, yeah.
And now he's getting a more specific result. And the important thing is that those top few handful of results are relevant to the as relevant as possible to the search, because that's what's going to tell the user they're kind of going down the right path. You can see too his faceted search narrowing the results along the left. That changes as he puts different search terms in. So it's not a static list. It understands what the products are in the result and will give you filters based on that. We also tell you how many results come up both for your generic search up at the top, and then your keyword search, and then also your results. So that way a user knows, well, if I click on this filter, I'm going to get 100 results, versus if I click on this one, I'm going to get 200 results. And different use cases, there's positives and negatives there. It's, sometimes you want more results and sometimes you want less. So we try to give you as much flexibility as possible.
I like that. And I was pleasantly impressed and surprised by how, when I changed search results, it got more accurate and got better results.
Well, thank you.
I am, got to give credit where it's due. So what was important? Search is crucial for success. If you don't have a search engine that works, you probably are missing out on sales. In fact, I can guarantee you're losing sales and you're losing would-be distributors. Make sure all your product results are correct. You'd be surprised if my information isn't up to date and I search, that can really, really mess up.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. I mean, it can be time-consuming to put your information into any database. There really isn't the most detailed information possible about your product. But what happens is the more detailed information your product is in any database, regardless of its ESP website or anyone else, that's going to help the search engine bring up more relevant results. The other thing that's important too is that you don't want to spend time putting in information that is packing keywords or descriptions, and people use that, and it does trick some of the search engines. But what happens is users just end up filtering that out.
Yeah.
So although it'll work in the short run, it doesn't work in the long run. So the most common example is you look at someone like Google, who spends a lot of time educating people on how to organize their site, their web pages, and the files on their web pages, so that people don't do that. And here at ASI, we spend a lot of time thinking about that and making sure that the content that we present about the products is as accurate and as relevant as possible. And search engines, any search engine is really designed to adhere to that idea. So as things get less relevant or too many words and descriptions and things, it's more difficult to determine that the product's relevant and harder to show it on the page. So that's my nerd rant.
I'm glad we had it.
Search.
Yeah, the last point here is simply ESP Websites has a plugin that you can add on your website and get it kind of squared away. Again, you don't want to mess around with search, and that's the moral of this rant and the moral of Matt's rant. It's really important. Have things move. This is our next one, and this is simple. Like, this can get confusing, but don't try to overcomplicate it. Just simple interactions can help the user know if they're doing something right or wrong, and that's a big deal with web design. So our first example. Our first example is something that I think everyone here could do. In fact, I'm confident everyone here could do. Day one, like right after this webinar, you could do it, and that's just adding a video for a background. Because even that movement can help a user understand, okay, I'm at a home page and this interaction is happening and it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the web technology and internet speeds are increasing at such a rapid rate that when you can use those things tastefully, understanding, of course, that you need to be able to maintain speed on your site, but when you can add those things tastefully, it really does add a lot of gloss and shine, specifically to a home page. Also, you'll see many websites will add that to a product detail page. So you'll see the image rotate, you'll see a video of the product, even simply a product video. I mean, just clicking on a product video and having it play seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how rare it is to find that. And that would be really important in products that are difficult to, that have to be demonstrated. So of course, a hat or a t-shirt probably doesn't need to be demonstrated, but if you have some electronic tool, or if you have some new promotional tool that's great for sporting events, showing it at the sporting event, think about that. And so having that on your home page or the product pages and having it move is a really nice thing to do. And people started, this has really become a trend over in the past 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. This is cutting edge coming from Matt and Colin. Next, but here's the thing is there is like a give and take to these animations. They have to be very, very subtle. And you can't just because Matt and I say it's a good idea, don't go to your designer today and say, oh, you know what, I need 1,000 animations on this page because I heard it in a webinar.
I was designing a site once, and I said to the designer, I said, I like a lot of the animation, but it looks a little bit like Las Vegas. Yeah. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, just make it look like Reno. So it's again, you want things to stand out, but if everything is important, nothing is important. So using it tastefully is really important, but it is a nice thing to have. The other thing too, in terms of animation, is when users press buttons, and so we have this on our ESP websites, but when you're designing your own websites as well, when users add something to a cart, when they take some kind of action, reinforcing that that action was successfully completed is incredibly important. Websites now are a lot more stable than they've ever been, and anyone who built a website and any provider will do this. But there has been a very long time when websites were not stable, and that was required. So people are used to it. And there's very few things that happen in the real world where you take an action and you don't see the result of that action immediately. So think about confirmations, think about dialog boxes, think about giving you a success page, and those little things, changing the state of a button when they roll over. Those little things can go a long way so that someone knows what they're doing is the right thing.
So then what is important? Let users know they do something right. Matt had a great example with the shopping cart. That those little touches of just reinforcing that a user is doing something correctly really do make a big difference. But again, don't go overboard. Be Reno. Don't be Las Vegas. We need to keep everything kind of in check here. God, I'm going to use that now. I like that. So now this is more my turf, Matt.
Yeah, we're starting to get into your world.
We're starting to get into my world. Sending customers to a specific page. This is crucial for doing any advertising, whether it's Google advertising, Facebook advertising, or a banner ad on ESP. Sending a customer to a targeted location based on the ad is crucial. And it really will, you'll see if you do email express and you're sending them to certain pages, or you're doing a banner ad or you may also like, and you're sending them to a product detail page specific to that product, it'll be night and day.
And think about the design of those pages. You know, telling a customer that when they landed on your page that you realize they came from somewhere else,
yeah,
is a great thing to do. You know, because your site is going to be designed differently than the place they came from, most likely.
So Matt said that, and you know, it was a perfect transition. The ad on Google was 4th of July mattress sale, and what's the first thing on the banner? 4th of July mattress sale. So they really want to reinforce where you came from, understand where you came from, make it look more personal.
And exactly, they use a banner there to reinforce it. They don't just simply send you to a product detail page.
Right.
And that's really important. You want to avoid that whenever possible. And of course, sometimes that takes a little bit more work, but it'll help your advertising go a little further.
Oh yeah, those advertising dollars will speak. So the next example I have is, again, I'm looking for a mattress, but this Casper example, they send ready buyers right to the product detail page. And you have to think about that when you're doing advertising. You really want to try to focus and send them right to the product detail page. So like what Matt was saying, hey, doing a banner is hard. That's a lot of extra work. That's time, money. But just if you have an ad, send them right to that product. If there's an ad and they click on a T-shirt, send them right to that product. And you'll see your ROI, as much as I hate that word, your return will increase significantly if you send ready buyers to certain places.
Yeah, and this is because of what you searched and what the content of the ad was, I actually think this is okay without a banner. You know, I'd like to try to include that messaging, but it's not always a bad thing to send someone to a generic page. You have to think about where they're coming from. If they're coming from a generic sort of term, you know, if you say you just have the term mattress and you're advertising on that, then you probably could send them to a generic page. But then again, as you get more specific, that page should get more specific. And use the same language. So
Please, yes.
Don't say mattress and then say bed.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds silly, but that stuff matters. And we spend a lot of time here when we're designing our applications talking about the terms we use. You know, this is outside of this example here, but you know, add versus create versus make. You know, there's all these little words, and you've only got so much time to let the user know that they're doing the right thing. So just make sure that message is consistent, that the content is consistent there.
Definitely true. Consistency is key in any advertising. And all of you guys who've attended our webinars before know that that's my favorite thing. Make sure everything is relevant, relevant, relevant. So this is a Facebook ad. And Warby Parker is like, hey, let's check out our summer collections. I click on the ad, and guess where they take me? Not to summer collections. It takes a second to load. I was using fairly slow Wi-Fi, but you'll see they'll take me, and then the banner ad says, click here to view our summer collections. Really what they should have done is just taken me right to the summer collections. I saw an ad for the summer collection, and just take me right there. Don't give the user that extra step. Don't assume the user wants to take that extra step. I think that's another problem I see too with a lot of ads, is people assume that users, once they get to my website, they're going to know where to go, or they're going to know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you know where you want someone to be, and you probably have one or two steps that they're going to take to get there. And this is the case with any action they're doing on the website. Try to look at that. So maybe write out Post-it notes. A really simple way to do it is write out the Post-it notes of all the steps to get to anything. And this is really for any workflow on any website or any process in general. And then what you do is you take all of those and you try to remove one, and you see what the consequence would be, and then you put the number 1 and 3 together. And you can maybe combine 2 steps into one. So you really want to look at it in terms of each block or each link in the chain is one step that's going to make it harder for the user. So again, sending someone to a product detail page with a banner is probably the most efficient.
All right. So what was important? Your landing page should go to your landing page for an ad, should go to a specific page. Don't try to confuse the user. I know I want to give people a lot of credit. They're not that smart, and they're not that, up for it, and they don't know your website as well as you think they do. So if you don't send them to a specific page, send them to a product page where they can just check out and go. And then, like Matt was saying, reference where the user came from. The more steps that we have, like if someone's looking for a mattress, you better just include where they are. So the next one we have is, I see this a lot on websites, is be consistent, especially e-commerce. Just use the same stuff. Apple has a great, great website, and everything's the same. When I go and check out Apple Watch for a product launch, that launch page is the exact same as iPhone 6 was. It's all the same, and they do a great job.
And so what people will do on websites is they will create, first they'll create kind of a mood board, which will just, kind of describe what they're going for. So if you're working with a designer or a design team, they'll say, hey, go give me examples of sites that you like, and then they'll probably go try to find examples of sites that match that. So that way they know that they're in the same line. And they'll take a mood board. But out of that, and they'll go through a process of doing that a few times, they'll start to create what we call a pattern library. And that pattern library are the major interactions on your site, and the button and font designs and table designs that match that. They'll also many times lay out a grid. So they will say how large a box can be and how small a box can be and how those dimensions grow. And what that'll do is it'll help keep a consistent sizing to your site. And so obviously Apple does this in spades. The other thing to keep in mind with design is that it's much easier to keep design consistent when you have a very small team or small number of people giving input on that design.
Yeah.
It is always a bad idea to take a design of a page and take it around the office and ask what everyone thinks. That is the time to do that is at the beginning to say what should the page do, what are the pages that we like on other websites, what is wrong with the pages we have now. Once you have a design, you should have a smaller team that you entrust to execute on that design, and then of course having metrics to hold them accountable for that. And that is something that every company struggles with. But I think it's important to realize that if everyone was good at design, at least a larger portion of them would be designers. Right. But there are people who are very good at identifying problems and people who are very good at designing, and trying to separate those two things is important.
Very true. I want to also note that there's no font changes. I've noticed too, style from a style standpoint. So Matt was talking about typography earlier, and the colors and the mood. Apple is just straight across the board. Everything's the same. Everything. The font I use, I think it's called San Francisco, and that's the font across the board.
Yeah. The other thing too is they don't use a lot of lines. So space, let space be a place that helps. Or white space be a place that helps divide areas on your site. You don't need a border between everything. It shouldn't look like a large Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. And the modern web design trends really do that. I would also say from working, directly with designers, I've done a lot of design myself, but now we work with designers who are even much better than myself. That is probably the hardest thing to do. So recognizing that making it simpler is harder than making it complicated. So if someone's saying I'm having trouble getting something to look cleaner or simpler, recognize that that is a much more difficult problem than to have it look a little more chaotic, which might be right for your brand. I mean, there are times when sites can be a little crazy. I would stay away from it on most e-commerce sites, but of course, if there's an About Us page or a page you want to have fun with about some event coming up, you can think about breaking those rules a little bit. And so looking here at the Apple website, they use gradients, and they use subtle changes in color to denote different areas of the site. No hard lines, but that is a very difficult thing to do and a great way to lay out your site if you're able to achieve it.
So what's important about our ramblings? Homepage should always be similar to the product page. It should kind of mirror each other. Use the same styles, font colors, all of that. This gradient example Matt was talking about just a moment ago. And try to include the same amount of information for each product. You shouldn't just have one product have 2 paragraphs and then another product have a sentence. There should be some consistency and even some voice and branding. All of that should be the same. It's what allows for good layouts.
The other thing too for a supplier to keep in mind with the product descriptions is recognize that oftentimes your distributor is going to use this product description to explain that to their customers. So while you want to do a lot of sales voice in that, you want to have part of that product description, at least a significant part of that, where they can copy and paste it and put it in an email to their customer. We see a lot of product descriptions over here that are packed with information that is not appropriate for certain audiences. And what ends up happening there is the distributor has to do more work, and the more work they have to do to sell your product, the less likely they are to sell it.
That's a really good point, man. All right, so that's all I have. We're going to spend the rest of the time answering some questions. If you guys have a specific question. What?
I have a specific question that I've been thinking about here. So about 53% of you, or exactly 53% of you, hired someone else to do your website. So prior to ASI, I helped start a development firm where we worked with a fairly large number of clients on projects from small WordPress sites to the first iPhone apps to enormous businesses that scraped Twitter and did all sorts of fun things with data. I want to hear about some of your challenges and some of the things that you are thinking about and struggling with or would like advice on when working with these external clients. I've been on both sides of that equation. And of course, anything that's industry specific about ASI, promotional products, and web design in general, I'd be happy to answer. So think about a design question you're having, thinking about if you're struggling with timeline and not getting answers back. I've been a part of every phase of the development cycle.
Yeah, and I know a big question I hear a lot is, you know, should I have this, should I have that? The answers to those questions, as much as I think Matt is a thought leader in the user experience world, Matt probably, well, for the suppliers he might, but in general he might not always have the answer because your users will have the answer. So you should ask, if you're a supplier, ask distributors what they're looking for when they visit your site, or something along those lines. Figure out what they need and what they want.
Yeah, a good way to source content for your website, or start to organize that hierarchy. You can go to a couple different areas. You can talk to your marketing department and see what sort of messaging resonates in the emails and ads that they're doing. You can also talk to your product support and customer service department. So common questions that can be answered either on your homepage or on some subsequent page after that would be great information. So think about the ordering process. That is one of the more complicated things in the industry, and it would be wise to have a page that kind of explains